Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Appreciate the start of the public conversation about this budget. We know that there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, but I've got some questions about what we've seen so far. Uh, One, you rejected the governor's plan in this resolution. You rejected his budgetary plan to allow SUNY to increase tuition. Are you concerned about the long-term sustainability of tuition at our SUNY institutions, and why was that rejected?
Um, First of all, Mr. Wolzak, before I respond, I just wanted to let members know that I changed computers, so I didn't turn my hair green. Somehow the lighting has changed. So, but on,
You look great, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To get to your question, we substitute, we reject the governor's tuition increase of $200 per year, but we put in the money into the budget to make up for that rejection of that. We also provide a tremendous amount of increased funding in other areas of higher ed. Many of the opportunity programs, we've added money, and we've also added a lot of capital for higher ed institutions around the state, including SUNY, which you specifically mentioned, as well as the SUNY community colleges, as I mentioned earlier, where even though they have had some loss of enrollment, we maintain the maintenance of effort for this year. Going forward, 98%, we will fund them at 98% regardless of, in terms of maintenance of effort, regardless of their enrollments.
Well, Madam Chair, as someone who represents two SUNYs, as well as a community college and two private institutions, I appreciate the investment in higher education here, along with the restoration of the governor's cut to Bundy aid. You've also increased the maximum amount of TAP. There's been this call for a long time of eliminating the TAP gap. Does this eliminate the TAP gap? And I'm reading that you've increased the maximum TAP award by $1,000. Have you also expanded the eligibility threshold for TAP, or is that maintained at $80,000 per family?
We have not expanded the eligibility for TAP. If you're correct in saying as I mentioned earlier, we increased TAP, the maximum TAP award by $1,000, and we effectively, with this budget, between these actions, we are effectively eliminating the TAP gap that we've talked about for so many years. That's hurt so many of our students and the institutions they attend.
One thing, Madam Chairwoman, I have the responsibility and the honor of serving as the ranker on higher education. One thing that came out throughout the many budget conversations about higher education was the TAP gap, obviously, and as well as the Excelsior program. There's sort of a school of thought, and hopefully this got back to you before putting this resolution together, that we'd be much better off expanding TAP, which you propose to do here, and eliminating the Excelsior program altogether. Is there a proposal within your One House resolution to eliminate the Excelsior program and expand TAP?
No, we don't eliminate the Excelsior program, but as we noted, we by increasing the TAP award and the other efforts we make in higher education, we have enough funds to keep these institutions whole and to provide for the students appropriate levels of staffing, at least to, for now. Also, should note that as part of the American Rescue Plan, there are funds that will be going directly to the SUNY. I know you talked about SUNY, but also the CUNY institutions. That money will go directly to those institutions to deal with COVID-related expenses that they've experienced.
Well, I'm disappointed that we haven't taken this opportunity. I think the Excelsior program is something that obviously was a pet project for the governor, very targeted at one specific group. The entire higher education community, as far as I can tell, much more supports funding the TAP program and increasing eligibility there for New York families, rather than having a duplicative, confusing, late to react and tough to navigate program like the Excelsior program. So hopefully that carries forward to the table as you're negotiating the final days of this budget. I just passed that along. On downtown, and switching gears, on downtown revitalization, does this resolution continue? Am I reading right? This continues the $100 million to give the governor to pick winners and losers of communities across New York State for his downtown revitalization initiative?
Yes, it does continue the downtown revitalization program, though, as I believe you know, and I've actually am a member of the CIAT board, those recommendations come from the regional economic development councils, and it's not a single person who makes that decision of where to fund those programs. And many of them I've witnessed myself have really made a difference in our state.
Yes, ma'am. The governor also requested in his budget proposal the legalization of adult use recreational marijuana. I didn't see that in this resolution. Is it included?
No, it's not, because we believe that we have had some discussions, and we believe that it's something we will deal with off budget, and the majority leader, Crystal Stokes, has a wonderful proposal that the Assembly is supportive of, and will continue to negotiate to come to some resolution of that. But it's not necessary that we do it now, since the funding is not part of this fiscal year.
Okay, I'm surprised. I think a lot of the pitch for legalization of adult use recreational marijuana was the tremendous opportunity that this government had to tax marijuana, and that there was a large revenue component. So I'm surprised to hear that you're pulling it out of the budget conversation altogether, but appreciate you committing to having that in an open discussion, and maybe at a further date we'll readdress it. The governor had $4 million for agritourism, and I couldn't help but notice this seems like a pretty great wish list where there's increases in funding above and beyond many things that the governor put forward almost across the board in this budget. Why are you rejecting $4 million for agritourism in New York State?
You are correct that we are. We have shifted the money for other priorities. I had noted just a few in my opening remarks of some what we're doing for agriculture, and there's a long list of other things that we have.
Yeah, Chairwoman, I'm sorry. I think I've made my point on that one, and continue to voice my support for agritourism, not the whole elimination of the $4 million there. I think in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about a relatively small investment. I just want to do a quick compare. Penn Station rebuild is funded in this as a large mega transportation project. How much does that project cost? How much are we funding it for in this budget year?
Well, that's $1.3 billion.
Okay, and just for a quick comparison, how much are we funding the Consolidated Highway Improvement Program that goes to our local governments for bridges and roads?
Let me get the information on the CHIP program. We are restoring. I know that we're restoring what the governor did, but we've also added some additional money. So let me just look for 1 second to get you that information. So we are 365 million on top of the governor's recommendation for CHIP funding.
Okay, I had one, and I mean, this isn't my first budget, it's my third, but this is a giant document. I always find myself finding new terms every time I dig in what is an economic uncertainties fund, and what does the governor do with $1.5 billion that sits in it?
But for the moment, it's just in the fund balance. It's not something that's going to be used.
Yeah, if you could, and Chairwoman, if you could just help me understand, what exactly is that money and what's the purpose? Has it been utilized in the past? What does it do?
It's really, it doesn't have any appropriations spent. I mean, it's not appropriated. It's just part of the fund balance that has just been separately identified. So it's just sitting there in the fund balance.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Speaker, on the resolution.
On the resolution, Mr. Walczyk.
For the good of the body, Mr. Speaker, California has a population of 39 million people. Their budget is $196 billion annually. The proposed resolution to New York State, which has a population of 19 million, for purposes of comparison, we're proposing a $208 billion budget. That's time for this body and the Senate, our counterparts, and the governor to all take a really hard look in our governmental mirror and say, what are we doing here? What are we doing wrong? I mean, in 2015, and I hear these arguments, right? Look, I don't represent, and maybe you do if you're in Lower Manhattan, I don't represent billionaires, I don't think. At least, I'd love if they gave me a call. I'd love to say hello. It'd be really interesting to meet anybody. I don't think in the front yard of America I represent any billionaires. I might represent a few millionaires. And I hear the arguments in here, we need to tax the millionaires and billionaires. But I can't help but look at the population that's happening in New York State when I hear people won't leave. Because in 2015, our population was 19,657,000. And in 2020, we're at 19,336,000. Babies were born in this state. We've lost 321,000 New Yorkers. And for my upstate colleagues, that is the city of Rochester and the city of Syracuse completely emptied out. Just imagine those two cities emptied out, because that is literally what these budgets continue to do. They empty out Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo and everywhere in between. This is a $6.8 billion increase over the governor's irresponsible budget. I mean, congratulations on the wish list, but it's time for the adults to get together and actually govern. Capital gains surcharge, high income earners tax, business tax surcharges, tax on manufacturers, increase in mortgage recording tax, estate tax increase. Sure, tax them into oblivion and keep telling me that New Yorkers aren't going to move out. Keep telling me that high income earners that pay the most in taxes in this state aren't going to leave. They've already left. They're leaving in droves. Mr. Speaker, as you can probably tell, I'll vote no.